And
Speak
that's
your mind.
From the limelight, and some people push their kids into.
Jed is rolling her eyes at me
Yeah.
already. It's okay. It's
There
fine.
we
I
go.
don't have a problem.
I mean, nepotism exists.
FMG Unscripted. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to FMG Unscripted, where we are candid and unfiltered. We're breaking down pop culture references through the lens of PR and marketing, because that's what FMG does. And I am ready to talk, ladies and gentlemen, about branding, okay? And of course, I can't have this conversation by myself, so I have two of my favorite comms professionals in the building with me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Davina Rutherford and Georgette Turnquest to the show. Okay, so today we are talking about branding, and we are using the lens of the Nepo baby, right? And I got to thinking about this because if you don't know, I'm the president of the Bahamas Hive chapter, right? And so Blue is actually my niece. And I was just thinking about how much growth we've seen. You see Georgette is rolling her eyes at me
Yeah.
already. It's okay, it's
Here
fine.
we go.
I don't have a problem with people
It's gonna
rolling
be a
their eyes
fight
at me.
today about how to not have a conversation about Beyonce and
Anyways,
Blue Ivy.
as I was saying, okay, so we've been talking about this sort of Nepo baby thing, right? And my question is, when does the Nepo baby brand, right, become their own? Because everybody knows who Beyonce is, everybody knows who Jay-Z is, and by default, we all know who Blue Ivy is because of who her parents are. But when does that transcend? Like, when does the Nepo baby start making sense on their own? Because Blue Ivy isn't the only Nepo baby who has sort of successfully transitioned into her own little bit of
First
stardom.
of all, has she successfully transitioned?
Girl, please
She's too
don't
young.
try me.
She's too young for us to say she has successfully transitioned.
Okay.
When does it pivot? When you see talent emerge independently
Yeah,
from
so-
that parent.
Right.
That's what I think.
So-
Lenny Kravitz.
Okay, yes.
Zoe Kravitz.
Yes.
So when you see that they have talent in their own right, I think then
Girl,
the
are you
conversation.
trying to say that Blue Ivy does not have talent in her own right?
Shh, but she's still attached to the navel strings.
Okay, no. Okay, I could agree because she is still a minor. Girl, not you. She's still a minor,
Speak
and
your
that's
mind.
she's still a minor, and so I get your point. I will take that point. However, if we use other examples, let's look at what's her name, Malia Obama, right? A lot of people don't know that viral Nike ad that featured Angel Reese. Was it Angel Reese? No, it's not Angel Reese. What's the other girl name?
Ajay.
Whatever her name
Yeah.
is, child. Just bear with me because I old and I don't remember people's names no more. But she actually directed that very viral Nike ad. That's a huge deal, right? So she has been and she has been working like behind the scenes, producing things, writing things, different things, and so there is there is talent that has emerged out of the Obama name without it being like very overt.
But the Obamas they intentionally kind of kept their kids separate. Yes, they fell under them, but they didn't force them into politics. They didn't force them into law. So they kind of kept them separate. Beyonce, because I don't know if I have authority
It's
to
fine.
call her B,
We
but
don't. It's fine though.
she put Blue on the stage. Now, to Georgette's point, Blue of 2024, not so much. Blue of 2025
is
because she does have a mother's worth ethic. Because Beyonce isn't talented either. She just works hard.
You a lie.
She works hard.
You a lie.
We getting in some dangerous territory
You a
now.
lie.
She works very hard.
Security.
Can't take that away from her and her work ethic.
Wow.
But
Security.
Blue has that
That's
same
a
work
whole
ethic.
Security.
Other conversation.
Security. Please remove the hostile guest from the set.
Okay, so before
security comes for Davina.
So I don't want to go down that tangent, right? But even though what we see from the Obamas, Malia and Sasha, we may not see their access and their exposure.
But they do have it.
They had access and they had
absolutely-
exposure.
They absolutely do.
because of their parents. They were in circles that our kids
Would never be in.
never be in.
True.
Because we are not the president of the United States.
True.
Before they got there, they were both very successful. They went to Ivy League schools.
Indeed.
And so their kids were exposed to those
To certain
circles
things,
and those
yeah.
people and that type of communication, that high level access and conversation. And so because of that, they got to be exposed to circles that others wouldn't have been. And
Agreed.
that has helped to foster and put them in
Yes, agreed.
spaces and pathways that others would not have access to.
Agreed. But at the heart of this is a branding conversation, right? So Beyonce, the brand, the Obamas as a brand, you know, I guess for me, it's the question of when does the Nepo baby separate themselves enough from the brand of the parent? Because even though Zoe Kravitz, I think, is talented, she is still Lenny Kravitz's daughter to me.
Right.
I don't think there will ever fully be a separation depending on how you're speaking about them. Anderson Cooper is a Vanderbilt.
True.
He has,
But
he,
see, but when I-
he is
but
also a
when-
very successful journalist, but he has the history and legacy of being from money.
Facts.
And he admits that he may have grown up maybe not as wealthy, I think, if I can remember the stories correctly. However, he doesn't disassociate himself from his own history. He is an excellent journalist, top journalist on CNN.
Very much so.
But however, he comes from that legacy. And because of that, he has been exposed to circles and has had access that other journalists in the field haven't had. I think
True.
the problem is like when you are intentionally excluding others and you are not opening it up to giving space to other people in the field or other voices, and it's like you are only catering to the Nepos, then it becomes a problem. You can't divorce yourself from your own legacy.
I don't think for me, it's not about divorcing themselves from the legacy. Like, I know he's a Vanderbilt, but when I hear the name Anderson Cooper, that is not the first thing I think of Anderson Cooper as the established journalist.
So when did that switch happen?
Hard to say for me, because as someone who works in the field, you know, I have always looked at him as this sort of, like you say, top tier journalist, someone who, you know, goes after the story, who asks the good questions. It wasn't, and yes, I'm aware that he's a Vanderbilt, but that has never been how I see Anderson Cooper.
But the nepotism comes into play the beginning of his career. You
Right.
got this young journalist,
True.
upstart, right?
Maybe he wouldn't have gotten in the room.
Right.
Had he
Because-
not been
Honestly,
a
would not have gotten in
You're
the room.
right.
He's getting media play because he's a Vanderbilt. And I
Right.
mean, you can say the same thing here. Certain people, certain political families, you're
True.
at an event, you got political families there, you got a kid who drops a quote. Is my quote going to be featured in the paper?
Probably
Or
not.
the Pinling kid or the Butler kid
Yeah.
or, you know what I mean, the Bethel kid. It's because of their history, because of their legacy, that they get that play. And in media and comms and journalism, it's our responsibility to make sure that all voices are heard. That's what
Fair.
I think it is. But you can't really divorce. You're a Bethel, you're a Butler, you're a Poitier, you have significance. You can't divorce yourself from your family legacy. Are you talented? That's a whole other question.
True.
You know, but I mean, nepotism exists.
So from the perspective of, say, the branding conversation, right? So we're talking about the big brand, who is the parent. So the parent brand, right?
The initial brand.
The initial brand.
Yeah.
When do we start, or how do we hold the Nepo baby, the baby brand, right, accountable in cases where they're not, it's not being perceived well? Because we talked about Malia, we talked about Blue, and those Nepo babies are sort of, you know, received well by the public. People see them and they're like, oh my God, they're doing so well. But there are some examples where it isn't all the way together. Like,
Yeah.
what's that girl? The I feel like her name is Alabama. That's Travis Barker's
Yes,
daughter, right?
yes.
So apparently she'd been on the internet cosplaying blackness. Also, y'all know how I feel about that. Let's not even take me down this rabbit hole. But she'd been online cosplaying blackness when she has the same access as other Nepo babies. She could be doing so much more
Well, I guess that's the side of nepotism, just like Jador Saunders, Deion Saunders' son.
Right.
The flip side to nepotism, or how it impacts the brand, is that if if your behavior is not above
Up to
board,
snuff,
or
right, up to
even if you're
snuff.
very talented, like Jador Saunders, his character and his father's legacy adds that additional spotlight on you. So if you do mess up, you have the added pressure because you're coming from that
However,
family.
I don't think he messed up. They
'Cause I was
just
about
did
to
not
say.
appreciate or like their light being shined.
That's
Well,
what I
that's
was
an
about to say
interesting
because
thing.
I
Yeah.
I was looking at the story and I'm like, I might be on the side. Y'all
No,
not
I
just
am
that little
on the
black boy.
Sanders side.
Yeah, because y'all mad that little black boy come there and he say, I really don't care what y'all
But I
think
mean,
of
isn't
me.
he spoiled? Isn't he entitled?
I
Isn't
mean,
he
aren't all
arrogant?
rich
But
kids
he's also talented.
He
You can't
is.
take that from him. He put in the work. He has the confidence that his father instilled in him.
Yes.
And you
His daddy tell him,
intentionally
"Don't let no-
blackball him because of his last name, not because of his talent.
But
so in
also
that
because
case,
of his personality.
but his personality is no different from the Peytons and the Eli's. They were confident as well. But because I'm a black person that's confident,
Come on and tell
you
her.
want to humble me
Ooh.
by all of the teams saying we're not going to pick him. We're going to draft him in the 5th round so he could
teach him some
sit
sort of
small.
lesson.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
whether
like
it's
the-
right or wrong, though, that is the flip side of being a Nepo baby.
Exactly.
That's an unintended consequence. Now, for some, we may feel it's deserved. You look at Kim Kardashian's daughter,
North.
North, and some of the behavior or whatever. We see what that'll develop into. But I mean, that's the consequence of nepotism, right? You have the good, you have the bad. When
Yeah.
does that brand become its own thing? I think that's yet to be seen with Jador. We have to see how that develops.
I think that's usually the case for because when we're talking about outside of like the Malias, whatever, because they are now adults, right? Because a lot of they're still very young, and so to your point, G, I think it is important to sort of wait and see. But we do have some examples of again successful because I think Bill Gates' daughter too. What was her name? Phoebe Gates, right? So Phoebe Gates, Bill Gates' daughter, is now a podcaster. She's a comms professional. That's what her degree is in. And even though we don't hear directly from her, she's becoming very influential in that sort of media space. So she didn't do what her dad did and go the tech route, but she is definitely making waves and doing things. Her podcast gets millions of views, which is crazy to me because it's also just very regular to me. But she does provide insights again because she has had access to certain things. Yeah. And so I guess for me, bringing it back to the whole branding conversation, right? So what becomes apparent is that the parent brand, they're looking for the longevity and they understand. And that is the thing about good branding. You have the parent brand, but you also need to figure out what the longevity plan is. You know what I mean?
You think
and for
that's the
these,
case with her, I don't know if that's the case with her. I don't think that there was like some family planning.
No, I mean it's never
with some brands.
Yeah.
Beyonce, Blue Ivy. Maybe there's like a family plan of what the brand will look like.
Maybe.
But in certain cases, I don't know if you can see hers as she is creating her own separate identity.
Yeah, she is carving out her
Yes.
own space.
And maybe it got played because of who her father is, but we will see if she will have longevity in the field. The one thing about TikTok and having a podcast there is that you are in the field with everyone else. We'll see how successful you remain.
Right, but keep in mind, remember, we spoke about intentionality. Some people intentionally keep their kids from the limelight, and some people push their kids into it. And let's be real. If I had the opportunity, if I had the money, my child would be a Nepo baby.
Period.
I wish I was a Nepo baby.
Your child is a Nepo baby because you are setting up that
Low-key,
legacy
LaVon is a Nepo
already and
baby.
providing access to
And
your child.
If you ask me, there's nothing wrong with that. We should never feel ashamed to provide access, resource, and accessibility for our children.
Period.
We work hard to
We
be
just
able
have
to do that.
teach them how to maintain it
And manage it.
and keep it. Yeah.
Okay, guys, you've been watching Unscripted, FMG Unscripted, where we have candid and unfiltered conversations about the things that we care about, which is PR and marketing. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.